Okay, we are going to read Social Studies, page 172. I would like you to take out your Social Studies book and have it out and open and reading along with me, please. Okay, this chapter is about coming to America. So we've certainly learned about the newcomers who came here and the explorers that came here even before them. And then people started moving over here from Europe and all sorts of places. And we're going to learn a little bit about them today. So when you flip through your phone book, you see many different names. Where do those names come from? Many belong to people who came to the United States from other countries. So we're talking about like your last name, like where did your last name come from, okay? So people from many places. Now this is in blue, so we're going to read it together. The United States is a mix of people from many world cultures. This mix of people makes our country a great place of diversity. Diversity means variety, okay? So diversity means different. So the fact that none of our skin colors are really exactly the same. Our hair is not really exactly the same. And we've talked about that in the classroom, that sometimes when some of our classmates were lucky enough to travel to other countries, they said, yes, everybody there actually looks the same. And that's so different than our country because our country is made up of people that come here from all different countries. And so everybody kind of looks a little bit different, which is a really good thing. That's called diversity. Okay, it means everybody's skin color is not the same as yours. Everybody does not have the same color eyes and the same color hair. We all have backgrounds from different areas, which is kind of neat because we have so many different kinds of food. We have so many different kinds of holidays and traditions, and we get to learn about those from our friends whose families have come from different places. So the people in the United States come from diverse backgrounds. They may be different ages and abilities, but many of their traditions have blended, creating our American culture. Okay, so I want you to take a look at this graph here. Now this is just like math, right? The first thing you need to do is take that 10 seconds and you need to read the title, read what these numbers mean, and then read what the bottom says. Okay, so take your 10 seconds, and then I'm gonna ask you a couple questions about it. Okay, so now we're gonna read the next page. And I want you to take a look at this picture here. Okay, and let's read the caption. Freedom. Frederick Douglass, right, so this is a picture of Frederick Douglass, escaped from slavery and worked for freedom. By the year 1900, thousands of free Black children attended school. Okay, so free meaning that they were no longer slaves. Okay, so that was by the 1900s. So that's really about 120 years ago. Before that, African-American children were not allowed to attend school. Their parents were slaves and they worked on the farms and the plantations as well, and they were not allowed to. So they were so excited when they finally got to go to school and learn to read and write and become smart, because that meant that when they grew up, they might be able to get a job that they get paid for. That's different than just what their parents had to do, which was to work on the farms and not get paid for it. They were slaves. So here, let's read about that a little bit, okay? So Africans in the Americas. Some settlers chose to leave their homes to come to the United States, but not everyone who arrived wanted to come. For over 300 years, millions of Africans were captured and brought to the Americas, forced into slavery. Slavery is a system under which people have no freedom. They're forced to work for no pay. People who resisted slavery might be beaten or killed. Many slaves did resist. Some even escaped or found ways to buy their freedom. During the 1700s and the 1800s, free Africans sometimes settled in their own communities. Some lived in large cities while some farmed in rural areas. Others started businesses or worked as ministers, teachers, and lawyers. Still, African Americans were sometimes treated unfairly. Sometimes, probably more often than not, treated unfairly. I wouldn't say sometimes, I would say that they were often treated unfairly. Many formed groups to help them succeed, to help each other succeed. In the 1860s, the United States government finally outlawed slavery. Okay, let's take a look at the next page. moving to the West. In 1542, Europeans arrived in California on the west coast of what is now the United States. At first, California belonged to Spain. From 1822 to 1848, it was part of Mexico. And then the Spanish and the Mexican settlers brought their language and their traditions to their new home. Then in 1848, California became part of the United States. Of course, there was a war. Every time the property and land changed hands, it was typically because there was some sort of war, and whoever won the war took the land. Okay, so we're a lot more civilized now than we used to be, but that is certainly how it used to happen in the past. That same year, gold was found in California. People from all around the country and the world rushed to California, and you're going to learn a whole lot about that in fourth grade about the gold rush, okay? It's in blue, so let's read it together. Many people moving to the United States settled on the West Coast. So the West Coast is where we live in California. Among the immigrants were people from China. An immigrant is someone who leaves one country and moves to another. All of us had immigrants as either our great-grandparents or our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. You have to talk to your parents and see which one of your family members moved here from another country. But all of our grandparents, unless you are a Native American, all of our grandparents or great-great-great-grandparents, one of our ancestors became an immigrant and moved over here to the United States from another country. That's what makes up our diversity. Many Chinese came to California to earn money for their families back in China. So let's take a look here. Okay, so these are the reasons that the changes that California have gone through. Okay, California and the West Coast. Immigrants from China, Ireland, Japan, Mexico, and many other countries came to work and find a better life. So here's in the 1850s, it started in the 1848, 1849, the gold rush in California. So here's people that are literally digging in the ground by the rivers for gold. Then in the 1860s, they built the railroad, and that connected the East Coast and the West Coast, which we learned about in our last section that we read. So that allowed people to move a little bit easier across the country. And now we're going to read over here. So let's first read, and then we'll come back and look at that picture and caption there. Okay. More immigrants followed. So people would write home, and they would write and say, this place is great, we're making money, here's more money for you. And then their relatives wanted to come out and join them. So later, other immigrants came to the West Coast. Farmers arrived from Japan, Korea, and the Philippines. From 1910 to 1940, the first stop for most Asian immigrants traveling to the West Coast was Angel Island in San Francisco Bay. Immigrants had to wait at Angel Island until the government of the United States decided they could come into the country. People also came to California from Spanish-speaking places, including Mexico and Central America. Today, more than 1/4, think of that as a fraction. So if you're thinking of a fraction, 1/4, right? Incorporate a little math here. 1/4. So that means out of 4 people, one of them are from some sort of Latino background, somewhere from Mexico or Central America. So 1 out of 4 people, 1/4. Okay, so why did many immigrants leave their home countries to move to a new country? Okay, so think about that. In order to pack up everything you have, which is, you couldn't really take a lot. You could only really fit it in like one suitcase that you would be able to carry, and move to a place that you've never seen pictures of, you've never seen a video of, nobody's FaceTimed you from there. There's a lot of unknown. You're kind of going on a hope and a prayer that it's going to be better than what you have. So your homeland, your home life had to be pretty bad to want to leave, to make it better, because that's risky, okay? And then here's a nice picture of California today, of us being able just to be free and ride our bikes and go out for a bike ride. And it's a beautiful free land that we live in. But back then they weren't sure, it was kind of risky to do. And a lot of people, were very scared when they arrived. They were very hungry. They'd been on a boat for 3 months, 4 months. The boat had run out of food. People were sick on the boat. So they risked a lot in order to come here. So their home countries were very poor. They weren't making it there, and they were really hoping for a better life in the Americas. Okay, so we just talked about moving to the east, okay, or the west, excuse me, when you come to the west coast. Okay, so a lot of the people from China would and Asia would come around the backside, and they would come over here to America. But then the people from Europe, it was much easier to come over to the East Coast. So let me get the globe here. Okay, so if you're looking at the globe, all right, so here is Europe over here, okay? So here's Europe, and if they were coming over, they would take the boat, and they would come over just like the explorers did, and the East Coast, where New York and Pennsylvania and Canada, Florida, all those areas, this is the closest spot for them, right? Because they're coming right from there. But if you're way over here in China, okay, and the Philippines and Japan, you're over here, you get in a boat and you head this way. And what's the first place you see? California. Okay, so here is San Francisco Bay right here. So they would come over on the boat and they would have to wait there in the California Bay. When from Europe, they would come over and they would have to wait on Ellis Island, which is in New York right here. Okay? Okay, let's continue. Moving to the east. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, millions of European immigrants came to the East Coast. Many arrived at Ellis Island in New York. Like Angel Island, Ellis Island was a government center for immigrants. One of the first sites to greet the immigrants was the Statue of Liberty. For immigrants on both coasts, the United States offered many opportunities. Some people were not allowed to own land in their old countries. In the United States, most people had the right to own private property. Life in the United States, however, was also hard. Chinese immigrants sometimes had to wait for weeks or months for permission to leave Angel Island. Many Irish immigrants to the East Coast found it hard to find jobs that paid well. So here is a picture of some immigrants to New York, and they saw the Statue of Liberty, which was a gift to the United States from the people of France, okay? And there's the United States, or the Statue of Liberty that's now in New York. Okay, and France was a gift to the United States from France. Okay, making contributions. The newcomers didn't give up though. They worked hard and made contributions to the United States. Chinese workers helped build railroads across the country. A Russian named Vladimir Zworykin helped invent television. Many immigrants have worked hard and done well in their new country. Immigrants continue to come here today and add to our country's diversity. Okay, good job.